shifts to a small family: Paul, his wife Wendy, and their 10-year-old daughter, Taylor. They're driving their RV to a lakeside campground for a relaxing holiday. The trip is cheerful, singing, laughing, and chatting. We also learn that Paul is a Gulf War veteran and enjoys fishing, something he discusses with Taylor. They soon reach the quiet RV park, where the manager, Tom, checks them in. With Thanksgiving near, the place is nearly empty. Tom explains the park's rules and warns them not to let their dog, Lucky, roam free. Despite the warning, Paul and Wendy are simply happy to be there. Paul plans a fishing trip and asks Taylor to get ready so she can join him, while Wendy heads to Tom's store for supplies. While Paul gathers his gear, he notices a young woman named Miranda bathing nearby. She and her husband are also camping at the park. Paul meets Miranda, who says the campground is peaceful and that she and her husband arrived yesterday, planning to stay through Thanksgiving. Paul casually invites her to dinner. Just then, Wendy returns with supplies. They spot their dog Lucky running loose near the RV, but quickly realize Taylor isn't inside. At first, they think she's nearby, but after searching and calling her name, there's no sign of her. Panic sets in. Police soon arrive. Sheriff Baker and Deputy Rakes take charge. We learn a prisoner has recently escaped and might be hiding in the surrounding woods. The sheriff tries to keep this quiet, but Paul and Wendy already know and fear the worst. Baker assures them the fugitive is injured and will be caught soon, promising to find Taylor. The sheriff questions them. Few people are around, only the young groundskeeper Justin and the couple Miranda and Eric. Paul says he saw Justin earlier and mentions Miranda, though he hasn't seen her husband. Baker has already spoken with Miranda. Eric was in their RV watching TV. Paul and Wendy suspect the neighbors, but the sheriff warns against jumping to conclusions. Taylor could simply be lost in the forest. He promises a day and night search, giving them a radio and his card, and reassures them he hasn't lost a child in 32 years. That night, an eerie scene shows a man with a knife in the woods, though nothing is clear. Inside their RV, Paul and Wendy are distraught. Wendy insists they search on their own. Paul resists at first, wanting to trust the police, but she convinces him, and they prepare to slip out without alerting the authorities. Paul and Wendy head into the dark woods with flashlights, calling for Taylor. Deeper in, they spot a small fire and a man sleeping nearby with an injured hand. Convinced he's the escaped prisoner, Paul whispers they should alert the police. Wendy fears he'll run if they wait. She carefully reaches for the gun beside him, but he wakes suddenly. A struggle breaks out and the gun goes off, ending his life instantly. Shocked and terrified, they rush back to the RV. Wendy is in tears, but Paul tries to calm her, insisting it was an accident and reminding her the man was an escaped convict, someone no one would miss. Wendy keeps repeating, "We have to tell them the truth," a line whose meaning becomes clear only at the film's end. Paul refuses. He won't risk losing both his wife and his missing daughter to the law. Soon, there's a knock. Sheriff Baker arrives to share updates. Paul quickly hides the gun. The blood-stained beanie lay there, so Paul deliberately spilled coffee on the sheriff to keep his attention away from it. The sheriff praises their coffee maker and then delivers surprising news. The real fugitive has already been captured, and he had nothing to do with Taylor's disappearance. Paul and Wendy are stunned. The man they shot wasn't the escapee at all, but a camper spending the weekend in the woods. Wendy is crushed by the realization that they caused the death of an innocent person. Paul keeps the secret, steering the conversation back to Taylor's search. Sheriff Baker, unaware of what happened, asks them to come to the station to file an official missing person report, since Taylor has now been gone for over 24 hours. Wendy is tormented by guilt over taking an innocent life, but Paul keeps reassuring her it was an accident and not her fault. The campground's young groundskeeper, Justin, stops by to offer sympathy for Taylor's disappearance. He awkwardly asks, "How old was she?" A choice of words that angers Wendy. "Was? She isn't dead?" she snaps. Justin quickly apologizes, flustered, and hurries off. From a distance, Tom, the park manager, quietly observes, his presence adding to the tension. Later, Paul and Wendy visit the police station to give statements, DNA samples, and fingerprints. Paul bristles at being treated like a suspect, but Sheriff Baker explains it's routine. Wendy grows frustrated, feeling the process wastes precious time they could spend searching for Taylor. That evening, the sheriff holds a press conference, sharing details of the case and asking for volunteers to join the search. He also suggests Paul contact his brother to keep the family informed. Back at the RV park, Miranda and her husband Eric bring food to comfort Paul and Wendy. But Wendy didn't like their arrival. Angry, she stormed into the RV and threw all the food away. She lashes out at Paul, blaming him for flirting with Miranda earlier and claiming it distracted him, leading to Taylor's disappearance. Paul calms her, reminding her they need each other now more than ever. That night, Sheriff Baker is shown quietly grieving. We learn that years ago his own son went missing and was never found, creating distance between him and his wife. Later, Wendy watches old footage of Taylor, unable to sleep. She grows suspicious of Miranda and Eric, noting that their dog, Lucky, normally quiet, barked at them. Wendy fears Taylor might be hidden nearby, helpless. Paul hesitates, but finally agrees they should investigate. Inside Miranda and Eric's RV, they find no sign of Taylor, but Wendy discovers fertility medications, suggesting the couple is trying to have a baby. She jumps to the conclusion that they kidnapped Taylor because they couldn't have a child. Paul insists that proves nothing. Still convinced, Wendy checks the RV's storage area. Just then, Miranda and Eric return from a day searching with volunteers. Startled, Paul and Wendy quickly cover by saying they only stopped by to talk about the search. Wendy tells Paul the police won't let them join the official search, but Miranda and Eric have been helping near the lake. She suggests they all look together, and the couple agrees. The next morning, they meet at the lake and set out in a boat. Hours pass with no sign of Taylor. When Eric wants to head back as fuel runs low, Wendy suddenly spots something in the water. Through binoculars, Eric sees it's only a plastic bag, but at Miranda's urging, he checks anyway. It really is just trash. Meanwhile, Paul secretly disconnects the boat's wiring. When the engine won't start, Eric assumes they're out of fuel. At that moment, Paul and Wendy confront them, accusing the couple of kidnapping Taylor because they can't have children. Miranda and Eric are shocked and deny everything. Desperate, Wendy pulls out the gun they'd taken from the woods. Paul tries to calm her, but in anger, she calls Miranda Paul's little girlfriend, provoking Eric. A fierce fight breaks out. The boat tips, and Paul attacks Eric multiple times, ending his life. When the chaos settles, Miranda has vanished. Shaken, Paul gets the boat running again and takes Wendy back to shore. Justin, the young groundskeeper, silently watches them return, but no words are exchanged. The scene shifts to Sheriff Baker meeting with Paul and Wendy. The case is drawing FBI attention, and he senses their growing strain. Wanting to help, he suggests a counselor who could guide them through the trauma. Wendy snaps, insisting they need no therapy, only their daughter. She reminds the sheriff of his promise to find Taylor and storms out. Later, Baker goes to speak with Miranda and Eric. When no one answers, he enters their RV and discovers a necklace hidden behind a cabinet. At that moment, a deputy reports a body has been found. Everyone rushes outside, including Paul and Wendy, fearing it might be Taylor. Instead, it's Eric, the man Paul ended. The sheriff shows them the necklace, and Wendy quietly admits it belongs to Taylor. This deepens police suspicion of Miranda, who is now missing. Paul panics, wanting to tell the police what they know about the RV. Wendy warns that sharing such details would make them suspects. The couple convinces themselves that each killing was just an accident, using that excuse to bury their guilt, even as the weight of their actions grows heavier. Meanwhile, Justin is shown speaking with Tom. He bluntly asks if Tom had anything to do with the recent deaths. Tom denies it. We learn Justin has no real family and that Tom took him in, giving him a job, but also getting him hooked on drugs so he'd always stay dependent. That night, Wendy seems restless. Paul suggests they relax with a movie, but she storms out and goes to Tom's shop. While picking a DVD and a chocolate bar, she hears strange noises from a room marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Curious, she tries the door just as Tom appears. Startled, Wendy quickly shows her items, explaining she has no cash. Tom lets her borrow the movies and expresses sympathy about Taylor, but Wendy senses something odd about him. Back at the RV, she argues with Paul, accusing him of not caring enough about their daughter. Soon, Justin stops by, awkwardly offering a chocolate bar and wishing for Taylor's safe return. Wendy appreciates the gesture. After he leaves, her suspicion grows. She quietly follows him and sees him near his trailer using drugs, which unsettles her. Without saying a word, she returns to the RV. That night, Paul steps outside for a smoke and notices movement on the lake. Shining his light, he sees Taylor's body floating. He dives in, desperate to revive her, then wakes with a start. It was only a nightmare. Stepping out, he discovers someone has taken the dog's life. Shocked, he wonders who could do such a thing. Despite the ongoing investigation, police still have no solid leads. It's Thanksgiving morning. Sheriff Baker advises them to stay at a hotel for safety, but Paul refuses to leave until Taylor is found. He also reports that Wendy saw Justin using drugs, suggesting the sheriff question him. Later, the sheriff tells his deputy that a strand of hair was found on Eric's wedding ring, with DNA results pending. He questions Justin, sharing a story about his own son's struggle with addiction, and urges him to confess if he knows anything. Justin denies involvement, clearly frightened, and is allowed to leave. Soon after, the sheriff receives an urgent call. Wendy has taken too many sleeping pills in an apparent self-harm attempt. When the sheriff arrives, Paul agrees to see a therapist. The doctor explains the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. He tells them they're moving through these stages after losing someone they love and need to support each other. Paul and Wendy seem to understand and leave the investigation to the police. That night, Wendy goes to return the movie to Tom's shop. Again, he isn't at the counter, and the authorized personnel-only door is locked from the outside. Curious, she finds a key and steps inside. The room appears soundproof, as if someone lives there. Inside, she discovers a hidden space filled with a TV and VHS tapes labeled with children's names. Playing one tape, she's horrified to see a man preparing to harm a young girl, proof that Tom is involved in something vile. This explains Justin's earlier question to Tom and his own troubled drug use. He likely knew about Tom's dark secrets. Before Wendy can react, Tom strikes her from behind. She wakes to find her hands and feet bound with tape. Wendy watches as Tom frantically tries to destroy evidence of his crimes. Seizing the moment, She uses a screwdriver to cut herself free. Outside, Paul searches the store for her, but Tom says nothing. Wendy escapes her bindings and attacks Tom. A brutal fight erupts. He overpowers her and tries to strangle her, but she grabs a hammer and strikes his head, ending his life. She runs outside and tells the police everything. The next day, Sheriff Baker holds a press conference revealing Tom's secret life and suggesting he may be part of a larger ring. They now suspect he could be tied to Taylor's disappearance. The FBI joins the case. At the RV, Paul begins throwing away Taylor's belongings, saying it's time to accept that she isn't coming back. Though shaken, Wendy finally agrees. The following morning, the sheriff wakes to find a note from his wife saying she's left him. As he sits alone, he notices a photo of Paul and Wendy. Wendy is pregnant, and the Twin Towers are still standing. Realizing the timeline doesn't add up, he senses something is very wrong. The sheriff calls a colleague to double-check Paul and Wendy's background. He learns they only investigated Taylor, not the parents. Looking again at the photo of a pregnant Wendy with the Twin Towers still standing, the sheriff realizes something is off. Paul and Wendy claim Taylor is only 10. He contacts the brother Paul, listed as an emergency contact, and the truth emerges. Taylor actually died in an accident 6 years earlier. Paul and Wendy never accepted her death. As the therapist had explained, grief passes through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. Paul and Wendy never reached that last stage. Instead, they created a shared delusion, known as folie à deux, in which Taylor was still alive. Reporting her kidnapping was their way of reliving the bargaining stage, pretending she could be found. Much of what happened was their own doing. Paul planted Taylor's necklace in Miranda and Eric's RV, and Wendy took the dog's life to keep the illusion alive. Her repeated line, "We have to tell them the truth," was about admitting this hidden reality, a truth they couldn't face until the very end. Paul's brother tells the sheriff that Paul and Wendy never harmed anyone and seemed to live a quiet, normal life. He never pushed them to face reality, thinking their fragile peace was better left intact. Then another officer arrives with a new report. The hair found on Eric's wedding ring matches Paul's DNA. Realizing the truth, the sheriff rushes to arrest them, but their RV is gone. A nearby family says Paul and Wendy left only moments earlier with their own young daughter, but nothing suspicious happened. The film closes with Paul and Wendy driving off on another journey. Earlier, they had thrown away Taylor's belongings, hinting they might finally accept reality. Yet, Paul plays an old video of Taylor, showing they still cling to their illusion. For them, their little girl is alive in memory, and perhaps always will be.